Hi, and welcome. I'm here to provide a few tips for you, especially if you're a newer player interested in making your own life easier and lazier in Arkveld Extreme. This is not a proper guide, and frankly, there are already many amazing, high-quality guide makers in the community for Extreme and Savage, the most well-known one being Hector, of course. So, I will not be going over the mechs in any meaningful way. My goal is to provide you with a few tips that will hopefully be helpful to you and lead to improved consistency and ease in clearing and farming Arkveld Extreme. So let's get right into it. First tip. Arkveld performs quite a few larger than half room swipes throughout the fight, and so it's easy to lose track of when Arkveld exactly does these swipes deeper into the fight. The swipe animation is also less obvious if you are behind Arkveld, as in the footage presented, especially if you happen to be a bit more focused on pressing your buttons. Now, a trick I found useful was to try to always make sure I'm standing in front of Arkveld. This isn't something you should be doing in most fights in the game, but here in this fight specifically, Arkveld does not frontally cleave, and Arkveld also has an omnidirectional hitbox, meaning melees will get all their positional bonus damage regardless of where they're standing. So you can safely stand in front of Arkveld without fear of damage. So when Arkveld does swipe, it will be extremely obvious to your eyes. Second tip. If you are on a shield healer, stacking shields and mitts for towers can help cover mistakes other players may make. Even if a tower gets missed, let's say maybe one of the tanks died to a dumb mistake in the previous mech and couldn't soak the tank tower. Your party will still survive if, as a shield healer, you give them stacked shields and mitts. Of course, if you're a DPS and you notice a tank dead, you can also use an individual mitt of your job or sacrifice yourself to take a tank tower. You might argue that a party on PF should be able to do this properly 100% of the time, but this is still useful for prog, and also useful if you just get unlucky or there's a random bad pickup route. And by using these shields and mitts, you can turn a potential wipe into clear or more prog, which is time saving and also farming efficiency. Third tip. There are parts in this fight where ring AoEs spread out after Arkveld jumps around. Later in the fight, there are also waves spreading outwards and then returning inwards. A trick I found to make my life easier was to dodge into overlapping AoEs in both of these mechanics. The reason this is effective is that you are essentially dodging two AoEs at once, so you won't have to keep track of exactly which wave you have already dodged and which one you still need to dodge next. For the spreading rings AoE, you want to position yourself closer to the slower spreading one, and then move into the overlapping ring zone. This can be done for both range and melee. The benefit of this approach, however, is most applicable to the wave spreading out and then coming back in later in the fight, because a 2-minute burst window does occur during this mech. What I notice is having to execute the 2-minute burst well on a busier job can be distracting to myself to dodge these waves, and it's far easier to position yourself on an intercardinal line and dodge into the overlapping zones. This works for both when the waves go out and also when the waves return to the middle. Fourth tip. Later in the fight, sometimes you may be selected to bait a laser beam that chases you across the room. Try to bait right up close to the boss, because this means the distance you have to run to get to the other end is much shorter and lowers the risk of the laser beam catching up to your position. Right, fifth tip. This is something that most vets probably already know, which is to look at the hitbox markers to determine the direction that Arkveld is facing. You have the frontal arrow and the smaller side arrows to help you orientate the boss. This is mainly useful for when Arkveld raises one arm super high to swipe half the room, while each player gets spread markers on them. When this happens, quickly look at the hitbox to better identify exactly which area is the safe half side and which half side is getting cleaved, because the animation of the boss does look slightly off. As an aside, a normal hitbox looks like this, with the frontal arrow outside the circular hitbox. For Arkveld, the arrow is inside the hitbox, which is how you can determine if an enemy is omnidirectional or not for melee positionals. Alright, that's all from me today, and I hope that with these tips you will get to have an easier and lazier and more consistent time in Arkveld Extreme. Please like, comment and subscribe, and good luck on your mount farm.